Hello, good evening, and welcome to WMT Reviews 12 Nights of Halloween. I am Wise Man Tanofsky. The Japanese. You know, there's something about Japanese horror which just makes everything they do that bit scarier than the rest of the world's cinema. I don't know what it is, if it's the suspense, or the atmosphere, or the fact that to an outsider like myself, Japan feels like another planet entirely. But every time Hollywood does a remake of Japanese horror movies, you can bet hundreds of people online will be saying, "Oh, it's nothing compared to the original." And most of the time, yeah, I have to agree. Like I say, I don't know if it's the actors, the direction, or the production, but something about modern Hollywood horror remakes just makes them feel so artificial when compared to their oriental roots. For instance, tonight on 12 Nights of Halloween, we're taking a look at the Japanese original for the 2002 supernatural thriller The Ring, with simply Ring, or Ringu as it's sometimes known. Telling the story of a mysterious haunted videotape that kills 7 days after viewing, Ring looks at the growing paranoia surrounding the urban legend, with the perfect example of a legend that cannot harm you unless you go looking for it. It's supposedly one of the scariest Japanese horror movies of all time. Let's take a look at Ring. So, what's the story? Nanako Matsushima plays Akasawa, an investigative journalist studying the mysterious deaths of a group of teenagers who died of unknown causes at the exact same time. While interviewing friends, she learns of a supposedly haunted cassette tape, which kills all those who watch it a week after the viewing. Akasawa travels to the retreat lodge at which the teens had spent the night together, where they supposedly had watched the video, and there finds a mysterious blank tape filled with disturbing imagery, after which the phone rings and the curse begins. With the aid of ex-husband Ryuji, played by Hiroyuki Sanada, they use her last 7 days to investigate and learn everything they can about the tape, before their son Yuichi, played by Rikiya Otaka, watches the tape too. On her last day, Akasawa learns that the tape is haunted by the vengeful spirit of a seer's daughter, murdered by her father and left to die at the bottom of a well. And finding the corpse, she survives her last day. However, Sadako still comes for Ryuji, killing him and leading Asakawa to realise that making a copy and showing it to him was how she had lifted the curse. The film builds suspense from the very first scene, dragging out the tension for just the right amount of time before the scare or the rare fake-outs take place, and you can't help but watch it as it unfolds. Similarly to black and white films, the modern audience has a horrible habit of overlooking Japanese subbed movies. But honestly, reading your way through the film is a hell of a lot less distracting than bad dubbing. Of course, the movie's main theme is the idea of the urban legend and how it spreads through word of mouth until people actually start believing it. No one really knows where the legend of Bloody Mary came from, but very few still have the gall to say her name in a mirror 5 times. But this film focuses more on the nature of human curiosity, to know for sure if the stories are true, which is captured in the teens, the main lead, and the curiosity of her young son. I talked about this last year when I reviewed Candyman, and this film tells a very similar story. If you don't go looking for the tape, it can't kill you. Taking a look at the cast, and apologies in advance for any enunciation errors, Nanako Matsushima is very convincing as the investigative reporter Asakawa. She captures the professionalism in her interviews early on in the film, as well as the professional and personal curiosity surrounding the legend. Her best scene is definitely when she discovers her son watching the video. Her shriek always sends chills up my spine, even though I've seen it dozens of times. Ex-Ryuji is played very well also. Hiroyuki creates this straight-thinking rationalist very well, who's clearly very eager to help Asakawa uncover the truth. And in all honesty, he has to act his way through the film's scariest scene when Sadako crawls out of the television set and comes for him. He is superb in that scene. Rikiya Otaka gives an admirable performance as the young Yuichi, though his screen time is minimal, which serves my hatred of child actors very well. He very rarely displays any kind of emotion, just sort of sitting there with a blank look on his face, even when his mother is screaming and weeping at him having watched the video. Could have been intentional, might just have been child acting, can't be sure. We don't meet the film's tragic villain Sadako Yamamura until almost the end of the film, but as I say, it is the movie's most unnerving and frightening scene. Ino'o gives an incredibly scary physical performance as she stalks towards the screen and then clambers through it. She has this massively unnatural way of moving, jerking her shoulders to the side, dragging her fingers across the floor, all while her head is bowed and her face is hidden behind that mass of black hair. I suppose this would be to show the massive damage her body suffered after being flung down a well. It's captured perfectly in the performance, and that moment when you see her wide, petrified eye with that high shriek of music, you feel it all over. Sadako is the archetypal monster of Japanese horror, the vengeful spirit trapped on the mortal plane seeking endless retribution, and while she may only have dominated one scene of the film, it's the scene that gives the film its reputation. There's often talk about the themes of maternal neglect in this film and the risk it can carry. Asakawa is so keen to embrace the opportunity for independent identity in the wide world that she barely shares any kind of motherly scenes with her son until told to do so by her ex-husband when she only has days left to live. Throughout the film there's an eerie absence of music which really makes you notice when it's suddenly there. The moment where one of the girl's mother relives finding her child's body was one of the few which filled me with a sudden rush of adrenaline and caught me completely off guard, really signifying the great use of tension and suspense in this film. And of course, I can't help but admire the film's pure reliance on practical effects and makeup, especially when compared to its American counterpart. In the Sadako attack scene in particular, the total absence of CG just made that scene so much more unnerving and more scary than the remake's effort. That being said, I can't help but feel like this film was somewhat lacking in scares. I got myself bigged up for this utterly terrifying Japanese horror movie, and I was scared in 2 scenes, maybe. As I say, you have the scene with the mother, and then the finale with Sadako, with the scene in the well also being rather unnerving. But besides that, I feel like there was a lot of suspense for, in many cases, no real payoff, and just a simple end of the scene. Now, of course, it can be argued that the movie doesn't rely on cheap scare tactics like jump scares and the like, which is to be applauded. But while the tension was high and the suspense was thick in the air, I was only really uncomfortable during the Sadako scene. That was the only time I felt I wanted to turn the lights back on and return to the real world before sinking back into the story. So for that, I would award the film a very good 7.5 on the Orsometer. A great example of telling a story through the heightening of suspense, another tragic but terrifying ghoul to steal the show, and a climax not to be missed that will have you desperate to look away, but transfixed for every moment. So that is a 7.5 on the Orsometer for Ring. I've been Wiseman Tanofsky. This has been WMT Reviews 12 Nights of Halloween. Thank you very much for listening.